for duty-free access to the US market for various products. And of late, we have started exporting our beef, our charcoal, and our beer to the United States of America. As a country endowed with an abundance of natural resources, Namibia offers lucrative investment opportunities in key sectors that includes mine, tourism, agriculture, blue economy, and energy, as well as services, amongst others. The additional key advantages of investing in Namibia are as follows. We have a coastal strategic location with Wafish Bay Port that serves as a gateway to Southern Africa and beyond, which you just saw in the video that was played. We also have a skilled and trainable workforce that speaks English as an official language. We have a competitive tax regime that offers incentives for export-oriented industries. And we have a supportive government that promotes private sector development and foreign direct investment. We have a peaceful and a democratic society that respects human rights and the rule of law. We also have a sound macroeconomic management coupled with low inflation rate, a stable exchange rate, and a moderate public debt, as well as the development of the financial sector. We have a modern telecommunication infrastructure, and we have the road infrastructures that continues to be ranked as #1 and the best in Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, Namibia is one of the countries that produce the best beef in the world, which we proudly export within the African continent, the European Union, specifically to Norway, to the United States of America, and to China. And of course, the Ghanaians have tasted our cuisine 2 days ago, and we continue to invite you to taste the Namibian beef. There are many opportunities to develop in this sector. As we engage today, please visit our stand and talk to us on how we should collaborate on exporting our beef and our small stock meat to your countries. Equally, Namibia produces high-value fruits, such as table grapes, dates, blueberry, pomegranates, which are currently being exported to the Europe market. We are also exporting to the Middle East and other markets. However, it is our wish that these products find their space within the African continent as part of giving effect to trading under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. We have noted with interest that in Ghana, there is a lucrative market for our dates. And let's talk, let's engage, let's find one another so that we can sign a deal before we leave on the export of the dates. I therefore wish to encourage you to visit our exhibition booth outside these premises to see some samples and get a taste and a feel of the Namibian products, including the dates and the beef that I'm talking about. And as a country, we are implementing the Growth at Home strategy aimed at attaining Namibia's industrialization agenda through investment in key niche sectors such as manufacturing. Namibia is endowed with a variety of natural resources, including diamonds, uranium, copper, gold, zinc, lead, tin, silver, and our best sea salt. It is the world's 4th largest producer of uranium and the 9th largest producer of diamonds. It also has a significant potential for oil and gas exploration and production. Namibia's natural resources contribute to its economic growth and development as well as its export earning. You have learned and you have followed that Namibia's potential to produce green hydrogen and ammonia is at an unparalleled scale. This, combined with our noteworthy position as the 2nd largest producer of uranium, as well as the recent oil discovery by Total Energies and Shell, Namibia has an abundant sunshine that is suitable for solar energy development, and this makes a case for the achievement of Namibia's ambition to become the sustainable energy of Africa. As I speak, Namibia is currently holding our annual International Energy Conference. Let me emphasize that in order for us to reap benefits of integrated continent, much needs to be done on improving or developing interconnected roads, shipping lines, and rail networks, which will complement the enhanced communication and energy infrastructures, and to make financing instruments easily available to aspiring entrepreneurs, especially the young graduates and women in business. I am happy that our colleagues from Afreximbank and the Africa Development Bank are part of these discussions. Therefore, Namibia is committed to reform her systems and processes necessary for facilitating trade. Among the notable developments is various corridors that link our neighboring landlocked countries to our port of Wafish Bay. Furthermore, Namibia is in the process of establishing a one-stop-shop border post with various neighboring countries, as well as the national single window, which is aimed at streamlining the costs of doing business while increasing efficiency of trade processes and enhancing Namibia's attractiveness and investment destination. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me once more to invite you to visit our booth and engage our businesses. We have brought along some of the colleagues from our business fraternity and from the private sector. I also look forward to networking with you at our cocktail event that is to be held on the 26th of April, 2023, from 18 hours to 20 hours. Come and experience the Namibian cuisine and its cultural diversity. At this juncture, let me once again state that Namibia is committed to enhancing its economic competitiveness and diversification, as well as its social development and environmental sustainability. Namibia invites you to explore its potential and join in her journey towards prosperity. I conclude by reiterating that investing in Namibia is as much as about developing our country, is as much as about caring for the environment and promoting the advancement of local community, and it's about creating value for our investors. Join us to enable a better quality of life for our people and contribute towards building a prosperous Africa and the world at large. The Africa we want should be realized in our daily life. The Africa we want should be a building blocks of our contributions today, so that comes 2063, when we are to stand proud and look back, we would have achieved the aspirations, the objectives, and the goals that we have set for ourselves. And we must use the vehicle on our disposal, which is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, to trade, to engage, and to foster long-lasting relationship. I look forward to see you at our booth, and I expect you to come and taste our cuisine during our cocktail event. And I thank you for your kind attention, and I'll be looking forward to welcome you all to Namibia as potential and tangible investors as we move forward. I thank you.
Wow, such a compelling case for partnership and cooperation and an invitation to the land of opportunity, Namibia. Thank you very much, Honorable Lucia Lipumdu, Minister for Industrialization Trade, Namibia. What you failed to really hammer on is the fact that when it comes to beer consumption, they are second in the whole world. Ladies and gentlemen, that should inform you what will happen on Wednesday. You don't want to miss it for anything at all. I tried their beef, and that night when I went home, I said I wouldn't brush my teeth till the next morning. And so we move into another aspect of today's engagement, which talks about financing trade and strategic investments in Africa. What's the way forward? The answers to this lie with a very spirited panel. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to make welcome Mr. Salomono Hay, Mr. Kofi Bentil, Mr. Vish Ashagbo, Mr. Emeka Uzumba, and the moderator, the World Trade Centers Association Executive Director for Business Development, Robin van Puyelbroek. A round of applause for these distinguished gentlemen as they come. In 30 minutes, yours will be deliberations, and 15 minutes for the panel to engage you, after which we shall move to the closing ceremony. Mr. Kofi Bentil. Okay. The panel begins with a presentation by the Senior Advisor in charge of AFTA for the Afrexim Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Emeka Uzumba. He has done nothing wrong, please.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you so much for coming to Accra. I think we've had a lot of speeches and all the VIPs have been duly well recognized, but may I just, first of all, great Madam Minister, thank you very much, and for doing a fantastic job selling Namibia. I look forward to tasting that beer on Wednesday since I missed the meet yesterday. I bring you warm welcome, literally, from Professor Rama, the President and Chairman of the Board of Afrexim Bank. My name is Emeka Uzumba. Like the moderator said, I'm a senior advisor at the bank on AFCFTA, but I also double as the senior advisor to the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat on banking and financial issues. So I wear two hats. Sometimes it's difficult to know which one to put on, but I think there's a very strategic fit between what we do at the bank and what the Secretariat is also set out to do. In fact, it's like a marriage made in heaven, even though the bank had been in existence before the Secretariat. When the Secretariat was set up, the mandates really came together, and that's why we have this strategic partnership between Afrexim Bank and the Secretariat. Because if you want to make the difference you want to make in Africa through trade integration, there has to be a very strong financing component to finance the dreams and aspirations as set out in the agreement. I think we're supposed to, first of all, have a short video. Is that correct?
We are on a mission to transform our continent and empower African trade to thrive by accelerating the next generation of African businesses. We can grow stronger, trade further, and transform together. We're bringing Africa together. Afrexim Bank, transforming Africa's trade.
So thank you so much again, and all protocols duly observed. My duty here, just a very quick introduction to the bank, Afrexim Bank, before we sit down to discuss, financing of trade in the continent. Can we please get on with it? Who is? Okay. So quickly, I don't know if I can turn this so that I don't have to be looking back on the audience. Is that? But that's fine, okay. So briefly, Afreximbank, which is short for African Export-Import Bank. I know a lot of you, especially the visitors to Accra or even to Africa for the first time, probably is not familiar with the bank. But who are we? We are an African multilateral financial institution created in 1993 out of the African Development Bank, to finance trade. So the bank was specifically set up to finance trade in Africa, and it was in response to the financial industry shock we witnessed in the 80s, when it became so difficult to access trade financing to support trade because of the financial challenges we had. So it was created out of the Africa Development Bank as Afreximbank to support the implementation and financing of trade. And the vision is to be the Trade Finance Bank of Africa, which I think to a large extent we have tried, and sufficiently, I would say, tried to live to that mandate. The mandate of the bank is essentially to promote, facilitate intra-African trade. So what we focus on is actually trade between Africans, businesses with each other, or African countries, or trade out of Africa into the international market. And this we do on three foundations: through credit, provision of credit, risk-bearing instruments, and trade information and advisory, which is actually very, very key, because in some studies we did, we've noticed that information asymmetry has been a very, very big problem in Africa today. Most African businesses are not aware of the potentials available in even the next neighboring country. And because of our colonial economy, the development of colonial economy and history of economic activities, sometimes it's easier, to put it very bluntly, to import from China into Ghana than to import from Nigeria, 45 minutes away by flight into Ghana. So trade information is a big thing that the bank is trying to tackle, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. We are headquartered in Cairo, in the Republic of Egypt, and we have 5 other branches across the country. So we try to have physical presence in each of the 5 geopolitical regions in Africa. We have in Abuja, that takes care of the Anglophone West Africa. We have in Cote d'Ivoire, that looks after French-speaking areas of West Africa. We have in Harare, Zimbabwe, that takes care of Southern Africa. And we recently opened in Cameroon, that looks after Central Africa. And of course, another branch in Uganda, that looks after the East African market. This is a brief highlight of our shareholding. We have about 162 shareholders, not a lot like a public quoted company, but the good thing is that out of the 55 countries in Africa, we have 52 as shareholders. So that's a very, very big emphasis on the Africanness of the bank, because our focus is Africa. And with such strong shareholding, more than 60% by the countries themselves or their appointed institutions, that gives us a different kind of strength to support activities. There are 4 categories of shareholders: the Class A, which usually the countries or the appointed institutions, some of them through their export promotion agencies, some of them investment development agencies. And we have the Class B, reserved strictly for African financial institutions. And then the Class C, because we also have some foreign ownership. Some of the international export credit agencies, are members of shareholders of Afreximbank. And then the last class, the Class D, which is the most recent. All of you are invited to take ownership in Afreximbank, because we have international depository receipts, floated on the London Stock Exchange, through which you can invest, to become a shareholder of Afreximbank. And because of our affiliation of the African countries, we have particularly very important preferred creditor status in all the countries that we operate in, and that places us on a very, very important footing, to assist in the development of businesses, in the development of trade, in the development of investment, and also in the protection of investors who may want to come into Africa, because sometimes it is difficult to do business in some of the countries. Political risk, instabilities, unfair regulatory environment, but this status gives us a preferred status. So, and because of that benefit, we can also pass it on to investors like yourself. Afreximbank is very well capitalized with capital adequacy ratio of about 27%. This also allows us to take on the risks that we wish to take on. And it has investment grade ratings from 4 international rating agencies: Fitch, Moody's, Japanese Credit Rating, and the Global Rating Agency. All of them at investment grade ratings based on their individual classes of rating. We have a strong balance sheet with non-performing ratios of just about 3.5%, and we have tried to keep our cost of operations low at just about 21%, especially because of the very few areas of location that we do business from, and because of that, the number of staff we have. That has become very, very important because we want to give back as much as possible to our shareholders and investors, but that hasn't constrained us from doing business and executing our mandates, because as you will see later, we do a lot through local financial institutions. In fact, our strategy is to play a complementary role. We never compete in the local market with local banks. If there's a local bank or any other financial institutions that do whatever we want to do in the local market, we will let them do it. So for us, we have taken on the mandate of catalyzing business. When it's difficult, when it requires heavy lifting, that's when Afreximbank comes in. Our business is arranged on 5-year rolling strategic plans. The most current one for the current 5-year plan was launched last year, and it will take us to 2026. And you can see there the 4 strategic pillars. The first one there is intra-African trade and implementation of the AfCFTA, which is our flagship pillar, because everything we do is about boosting intra-African trade. Today, intra-African trade is just about 16-17%. That's all we trade amongst ourselves. But if you go to Asia, it's almost 70%. If you go to Europe, it's about 59-60% levels. So when we don't trade with ourselves, that means we are trading with outsiders. And that means we are exporting value to international markets. If you listen to the Secretary General this morning, he gave a very, very sad example of Africa exporting $6 billion worth of raw coffee beans. But by the time it goes through the processing and value addition and all that, it comes out to become about 100 billion worth of product, industry, one product, one commodity. So if we would export less of raw materials, less of primary commodities, and do more of processing locally, and trade amongst ourselves locally. So we don't go to buy coffee made in Brazil or coffee made elsewhere. We will add more value and will retain more value in the continent. And that's why the number one thing we're focused on doing is to make sure the AfCFTA is well implemented, because that's what it's set up to do, to improve and boost intra-African trade, improve localization of manufacturing, improve industrialization. The next pillar is industrialization and export development, because when you export, it's been shown that that's one of the easiest routes to development. It creates jobs, it creates sophisticated jobs, it brings in value from elsewhere into your economy. And the third one is, of course, to be a leadership, a global leader in trade finance, because that's actually where we were set up, which we have done sufficiently okay. But you don't want to do all this and then tomorrow you're not there. So we do all of this under a very strong financial sustainable basis. We operate on a commercial basis. We are not a charity. We are not a foundation. So We price our products and services based on value, and we don't mandate everybody to take. We sell ourselves based on the value. So if you think you get value elsewhere, please. But we know that given the things we do, we always create that value. And that's why we have remained sufficiently well in business and done well over the years. So financial stability is also a very, very key pillar in what we do. Yes. Oh, okay. So I need to, maybe we can continue during the panel. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So for us, Afrexim Bank, our mandate is to put Africa first. In the past 5 years alone, we have disbursed more than $20 billion in facilities to support trade. And we've given ourselves the mandate that during the current strategic plan, Plan 6, which we call Extending the Frontier, we want to double that number to $40 billion, supporting trade and investment in Africa. I've just been prompted, so I won't go into all these discussions. So I'm going to skip a lot of these slides, but I think we can make this available to give you a little bit more deeper sense in what we do. But let me just take quickly 1 minute to talk about the last one, the country risk and investment guarantee programs. Because so many investors will see opportunities in some countries, but when they provide the risk, they rather not take that investment opportunity because they are not sure they can get out of it. So Afrexim Bank, being a strongly mandated African institution with the ownership of African countries, we provide you investment guarantees to take opportunities where you say it. If for any reason you want to repatriate your capital or your profit, and there is any local reasons why you are not, we will take care of that. We'll make sure your money is available to you. And we will rely on that preferred credit status and deal with the local countries. So this is a very powerful tool that I'd like you to take away. If there are opportunities you have seen anywhere in Africa and you're constrained because of risks and you don't want to take those opportunities, come to us and we will provide you this service to take advantage of those investment opportunities. Apart from the financing instruments, which of course is available in most banks, we go beyond financing. We also have very, very many strategic non-financing initiatives because you have to have enabling environment. You have to have the information on what is available there. You have to capacitate the local players before you can even have a business to finance. And the first I want to talk about is the AFCFTA Adjustment Fund. We've all heard about the AFCFTA and how it's a big game changer, how it will lift 100 million Africans out of poverty, how will it grow the balance sheet of Africa by more than 450 billion, in new income and investment for Africans, how it will equalize wages. But as a big and strategic investment policy, trade policy, it will come with short-term disruptions. Because when you open Africa up as one single market, competition will rise immediately for some local players who have had dominance in their local market, probably because of power or lack of infrastructure that's easily available elsewhere. They'll face threats. Some countries don't even have the sophistication in their customs to administer, the new trade agreement. So the African Union Commission mandated the Secretariat and Afrexim Bank to develop the adjustment fund, to cushion the initial and I dare say temporary disruptions that countries and businesses will face in implementing this agreement. Because if anything that will hinder the successful implementation of this agreement would constrain the realization of the benefits that it presents. So the adjustment fund is a $10 billion fund set up by the Secretariat and the Afrexim Bank, with Afrexim Bank acting as the fund manager to provide support to states, to businesses, to cushion the initial pains of liberalizing the market, of eliminating tariffs, of opening up your business to new competition and all that. The next one I want to talk about, and please, MC, give me 3 minutes, is the African Trade Gateway. It's a digital platform, that's available there to support businesses, especially the SMEs. We had discussed SMEs in the morning. This is also jointly owned by the Secretariat and Afrexim Bank. The ATG is the African Trade Gateway, and it's a platform of several digital platforms. The first there is the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, which has today made it possible for the smallest of businesses to be able to transact with another business in another country. Because what it does, it eliminates the need for foreign currencies, third currencies, to initiate payment for transactions. So if you want to buy from any country, you just go into your local bank and you pay in your local currency. The seller from the other currency is also paid in local currency. Because today, how many SMEs have the sophistication to walk into a bank to go and request for a letter of credit, which is the main mode of payment today for international trade? So this has very strong inclusive components into it and supporting the SMEs. There are 42 currencies in Africa, and if you're a businessman, you're producing shea butter in Ghana, and you want to sell into 5 countries, you have to set up a treasury to manage those currency risks. So this is a very huge platform that supports trade. We also have the trader community. There is actually a trader club that does nothing but provide information. So it's a strong market access tool. It's a repository of what is available, product by product, in each African country, and who the traders and dealers in those products and services are. So you get into this platform, you don't need to go to Namibia to know who the best beef producers are. You sit in your office, you access the platform, and you're able to get information of whatever. You just key in the product, and it'll give you a list of wherever it's available in Africa. I didn't know it would be this.
Let's put this to a vote. How many believe that Emeka should go back to the panel?
Or how many believe that I should have more 10 minutes?
How many believe that you should wrap up everything here? Oga, make your judgment.
No, okay, I will go to the panel because I haven't discussed the financing that we provide. Just 5 minutes to show some of the key. Okay, no, tell me, what do you want me to go? You want us to go to the panel? Okay. Okay, I'll go to the panel, but please, before I go to the panel, I must talk about one thing. The Intra-African Trade Fair. If you don't go away with anything else today that's available, that's supporting the African Continental Free Trade Area, please just note the Intra-African Trade Fair. It has become the marketplace for AFCFTA. This initiative was launched first in Egypt about 4 years ago when we had the initial fair, and then the second edition was held in Durban in 2021. We do it every 2 years, so we're going to have the 3rd edition this year, sometime in November, hopefully in Egypt. It is not just a trade fair. It is a gathering of businesses. And on the slide there, you see the 8 various verticals this event is organized on. The last edition in Durban had more than 1,500 exhibitors. It's a 7-day event, one place. So you can imagine as a business person and you want to develop your business in Africa. Instead of coming to Ghana and spending 2 days, you go to Nigeria, spend another 2 days, you go to Mozambique, spend 3 days, you come to this event and you meet 1,500 or more African businesses exhibiting. So many more people come that are not exhibitors. In Durban, we have 32,000 visitors from 69 countries. And more than just being a fair of exhibitions, we also have dedicated deal rooms, investment, matchmaking. And you won't believe it, in Durban, in 7 days, we recorded $42 billion worth of deals done in 7 days. And because of these successes we've recorded, we have even raised the post for ourselves. So the one happening this year, we are targeting to have $42 billion worth of investment deals arranged. A lot of the 42 we recorded in Durban are already operational today. Some of them are still in the finance stage, being financed by Afrexim Bank. So if you're a business person, I mean, you're from all over the world and you have a strategy to expand into Africa, this is the marketplace for you. Your first point of starting. to assess African businesses. And another thing that discourages investment in Africa is not knowing where to start. If we are this fair, thank you. So,
second seat. Please put your hands together for the one, the only, Emeka. Damn. It has just been brought to my attention that he's an assistant pastor at his church. That's why. You now understand. Please give it up for him again. Would you please make welcome the moderator for this session, Robin van Poelbroek. He is with the World Trade Centers Association. He's the Executive Director for Business Development. A round of applause as he comes. He is joined by the CEO of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, NESG, Laoye Jayola. Please welcome him warmly as he joins the panel. Wow. They claim Ghanaians like to stretch things, and Nigerians too, well, but the South Africans have a different story for them. I'll tell you at the end of the session. Mr. Moderator, you have 30 minutes to engage your panel, and then 15 minutes for the audience, and then we shall call it a day. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. You make my time management task a challenge, but you see, it's always a lot of fun when you have bankers on the stage, and I know because I'm a recovering banker myself. But first of all, I wanted to thank my friend Emeka and his team at the Frexim Bank for this incredible support, because I do think it's very important to have a Frexim Bank as an institutional partner for us, because they are a critical source and resource to make the growth happen here in Africa. And Emeka was mentioning deal rooms, so we also, for the audience, I know there's a lot of business delegations here in the audience, we set up a deal room right behind the Namibian pavilion, where if you need privacy to talk business or want to discuss finance, guarantees, or trade information, there are specialists available from a Frexim Bank to speak with. There's Wisdom and Lisanne, maybe if you can stand up so people can find you. There you go. Thank you. So good, let's get started. We at the World Trade Centers Association are very much committed to the growth story here in Africa. We are firm believers that it is truly happening this time. Why is that? Just for setting the scene a little bit for our conversation. We heard this morning that Africa represents about 3% of global GDP. That's a very low number, if you think about it. The almost 50 countries of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area represent a little under $4 trillion of an economy. And as Secretary General Mina this morning mentioned, there is this opportunity to grow up to $16 trillion. So that's a massive growth number. And I think when we talk about growth stories, it's important to look at the numbers, at the data. And today, intra-Africa trade is about 14% of exports. And if you look at other regions in the world, and as everyone here from Latin America, from Europe, from Asia, that inter-regional trade component is 60 or 70%. So just catching up with that inter-regional trade component is a massive growth opportunity. Second component is, of course, undeniable, the numbers, the demographics, right? Population of almost 1.4 billion, about to double in the next couple of decades. 77% of the population is under 35. 80% of that growth is expected to happen in urban areas. So if you put all of that together, a tremendous opportunity. So there's 5 critical factors why we believe this is happening. First of all, again, this morning with Secretary General Mini, it's the institutional infrastructure of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. This is really happening, and it is a game changer. We have the physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure. There's a need for an energy infrastructure to power all of that growth. Then there's a 4th critical piece of infrastructure where we come in as a WTCA, which I see really also as a piece of critical infrastructure, which are the interconnected business networks. Economies can't grow if business people cannot find each other. And the 5th critical component is what we're going to talk about at the panel, is access to finance. Capital is needed to grow businesses. Companies, households need access to finance. So Emeka, I will start with you here as well. You mentioned some of your financing programs. I'm fascinated with your product on country risk. Can you maybe give one or two because I want to keep it as practical as possible, some practical examples of transactions that you've done that helped companies also get comfortable coming to Africa, going cross-border with transactions?
Okay, thank you very much, and I'm glad to now be in the panel. I hope we'll have a little bit more opportunity to talk about some of the financing instruments that we have to offer businesses like yourselves. You know, Robin has brought up the issue that I tried to emphasize during my presentation on country risk insurance. We noticed that that is a big hindrance, not just for international investors, but even for Africans ourselves. You know, there's a lot of latent capital in Africa that's not being put to good use. So what you see is that national business people invest in their countries, and the next thing you see, they're investing in bonds and financial markets overseas. Meanwhile, there are several African countries that can do with those investments, right? But because of several reasons, you know, there's a lot of political instability. That is a reality. Unfortunately, like what we are witnessing now, you know, currently in Sudan, you know, there are, you know, immature financial markets that you're not sure if you put your capital in, you'll be able to take it out. There are debt issues, there are foreign exchange issues. So Afreximbank has come up with this instrument to take away those pains from international investors and even African investors. So if you find an opportunity in any country in Africa that you want to take, but because of some of these other considerations, you're hesitant, you don't know whether you'll be able to repatriate your profits, you don't know whether you'll be able to pay dividend from the local company to an international owner as a local subsidiary, or you don't know if you want to exit. You know, you don't have visibility to the exit route. You know, who do you sell to? You know, how do you repatriate? Because as an international investor, you want to repatriate in foreign exchange, and there may not be sufficient availability of foreign exchange. So you come to the bank, we'll sit with you, we'll appraise your situation, and we're able to sell you this, almost an insurance, but it's in a guarantee form that if you made that investment and you want to exit, and you're facing local challenges, Afreximbank will take it upon itself to make good what had been agreed, and you leave us to sort ourselves out with the local country. Because, like I mentioned, we have 52 out of 55 participating states in Africa. And each of those participating agreements, you know, gives Afreximbank a special creditor status. It gives us some rights that the countries are not able to extend to individual investors. And we know the market. And of course, these countries are our owners. We are working for them, so to speak. So we'll give you that guarantee, and you can rest assured do your investments, knowing that if 3, 4, 5 years down, 10 years down the line, you want to exit, or you have made some money, you want to repatriate, and for any reason you're not able to, Afreximbank will make good those obligations. And this is a very, very powerful tool. Because, I mean, what are you here to do business for? Is to make money and take money home, or to sell your business when it grows and you reach your exit strategy. And those are the things that that instrument is established to do. And we can have more detailed discussions with anybody who is interested in knowing a little bit more about the instrument, but basically that is what it's there for. And it is actually existing and operational today. We have already some people who are enjoying such country risks.
Yeah, thank you for that, Emeka, and you're absolutely right. Companies are here to make money, right? And we also sometimes talk about the perception that people have about Africa, about doing business in Africa, often also the lack of knowledge about Africa, doing business in Africa. So the whole country, I think risk tools that you have are very important to cover, I think, that risk. So let me go to Vish, senior partner, country partner at PwC here in Ghana. He's an expert in debt and M&A advisory. So you've gone through many, many deals. So can you give us maybe a couple of examples of transactions that you've done? Maybe what has changed over time as well? How do you see the markets, companies willing to come here, looking at transactions, how put their financing structures together?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And I think listening to Emeka, his presentation and the narrative he just gave, I think all of that comes together in terms of how the financing works or doesn't work in Africa. And I think there was mention of information asymmetry, And part of what we do with clients and other stakeholders is to try and bridge that gap of information asymmetry. So sometimes investors or business people may perceive a certain risk, but in reality, that risk may not be as significant as they might think. So to answer your question as to what we've seen over time, we've seen that certainly in Africa, people are becoming more sophisticated in terms of understanding what it takes to actually put a successful deal together. So it's not necessarily about just understanding the policies or the regulations, but to go further to actually understand how it actually works in practice on the ground. So some of the things we've been able to do for our clients and other interested parties is to walk them through and bring clarity as to how things actually work in practice. So it can work both ways. You may be overestimating the risk, you may be underestimating the risk, because what's written on paper and how it actually plays out on the ground can sometimes be quite different. So it's important to get a clear view of that and let that let the practical aspects of it find its way into whatever transaction you're trying to do. And I'm happy to say that over the years, and I mean, I've been doing this now probably for about 20 years or so in PwC. In the old days, people came with preconceived notions of Africa, and as you said, being a very high-risk environment, and whether you can repatriate your profits easily, all the macroeconomic risks that we spoke about earlier. But I think over time, there's been greater education and a lot more instruments are available. Some of the things Emeka was outlining from Afri-Exim Bank and other institutions have made it easier. We're not there yet, but it's made it a lot easier to de-risk some of these projects and actually get a viable financial solution to some of the projects that we're trying to implement.
Yeah, thank you for that. And sort of as a quick follow-up question, because of course companies, they're looking to invest, they're looking to finance their, structure their transactions. We know what a Afri-Exim Bank can do, but there's a lot of money available in pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, private equity. So do you also help, because the gap seems somewhere to be with the commercial lending part of the spectrum. How do you help clients, companies to actually, get access to financial resources from the commercial side?
Right. So yes, we do assist on all of that. And again, it goes back to the point about information asymmetry. You need to know where to go. You need to know, well, first of all, you need to have a clear view and understanding of what type of financing works for your project, first and foremost, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. Traditionally, people look to bank or commercial bank financing, which may not necessarily be the best, depending on what type of project you're willing or you're trying to undertake. But the other thing that has happened over time is that the capital markets and other financial institutions or financial, let me call it the ecosystem, has actually improved. So you spoke about pension funds, for example. And I think we've seen certainly in West Africa that picking up steam quite significantly over the last few years. So suddenly now there's a lot more choice, or there's a lot more potential in terms of if you're trying to finance a project, what kind of options are available to you. Private equity, you mentioned, development finance institutions are over there, depending on what you're trying to achieve. So yes, we work with clients, we work with institutions on all these different types of financing, but again, tailored to the project and having a clear understanding of what the project is all about and what the objectives are you're trying to realize. Yeah.
Great, thank you for that. Salomo, Managing Director of High Economic Intelligence, we'd love to hear from you because we have delegations here covering a wide number of sectors and industries. From your research, what would you say are the top 3 most promising sectors to invest in? And I know it's a very broad question, of course, but I'm thinking agriculture or ICT or infrastructure, but also where is the opportunity and the need greatest, like for the businesses here in the room?
Yeah. No, thank you very much. So I think the point has been made that over the course of time, we have realized that the continent is, in a sense, underserved in relation to the foreign direct investment that flows to the continent. If you look at 2022, we had around 84 billion USD flowing to the continent. and that's almost around 4-5% of total FDI globally. Now, if you look at which sectors this particular FDI flows to, obviously there was a position on the extractive sector, which is mining, right? Mining to the extent that a lot of it is really exploration. And I think Menangula made the point very clear that it doesn't always reflect in jobs. Now, with this particular 84 billion that we have made reference to, almost 40% of that actually went to intra-firm investment, right? Now, when we refer to intra-firm investment, we're referring to potentially companies that are trading on the stock exchange. And this could typically be the South African Stock Exchange, right? So what you have there is almost a tertiary sector on the financial services side that's growing so quick, efficient in a sense, but it doesn't give the practical reality to the real sector. And the real sector is where Africa needs support in terms of the industrialization. And unfortunately, at this stage, we've got this disjuncture that exists. Now, coming back to your question in terms of what are the three sectors that perhaps we should focus on as a continent to be able to make the dent that we want to make, I think there is a point to be made around diversification, in the sense that you don't want to put your eggs also in one basket, because there could be repercussions when you do that. But I think there's full appreciation for certain sectors that we enjoy as the continent comparative advantage. One of those goes without saying is the agri sector. And the agri sector, we tend to really sort of put it at the high as a big ticket item for the continent. But even if you look at some of our challenges that we have, it's a consequence of not being able to optimize this particular resource that we have. If you think about inflation, for instance, a big part of the inflation that we import is supply-side inflation on the continent, driven by the soft commodities like food, while we are sort of plumbing ourselves to be at the cutting edge of the sector. So we really need to look inward, and inward in a sense of the foreign direct investment that flow needs to be tailored. It needs to be tailored to the extent that when you've got an Afri-Exim bank coming on board, it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all, but really a blended sort of financing product that speaks to the aspirations of where the continent is. Because remember that we are at a certain level of development if you compare us to the advanced economies, and subsequently the products that we need to tailor to be able to make sure we propel funding, and subsequently then make sure this leads back to the real sector, needs to be very tailored. So the agri sector is one. The second one obviously is the energy sector, in my view. I think that we can speak as much as we want about industrialization and what we want to see. But if we can't power industrialization, it means that it will remain a pipe dream. So there's a huge need for us to really invest in energy. And invest in energy, especially in the energy where we enjoy, again, a certain level of comparative advantage. I know that there's a big move towards the just transition that's on everyone's lips, but I think we need to have an energy mix that can really accommodate where we are as a continent. And when I say an energy mix that can accommodate where we are as a continent, it means that